The royal palace of Seravine was unlike anything Captain Daniel had ever seen. Tall golden towers reached into a purple sky. Crystal bridges floated in mid-air. Strange glowing trees lined the paths, and soft music played without any visible source. Everything shimmered beautiful and unreal. Daniel adjusted his collar nervously. His uniform was clean, but he still felt out of place among the perfectly dressed alien nobles who walked past him without even a glance. He was a soldier, a pilot, not someone meant for palaces. He had come here only to return a sacred crystal he found during a rescue mission near the Seravine border. He had saved a colony ship from pirates, and now the Queen herself had requested an audience. But something felt off. Why would a queen want to meet a random human like me? He whispered to himself. Before he could think more, the guards opened the tall silver doors. "Captain Daniel," one guard said. "The Queen is waiting." Daniel stepped into a massive chamber filled with soft blue light. At the end stood Queen Lerexa, tall and graceful, with glowing violet skin and long silver hair flowing like water. Her eyes were bright and sharp-wise, but also unreadable. "Welcome, human," she said, her voice smooth and commanding. "You may rise." Daniel blinked. He hadn't realized he had already bowed. "Thank you, Your Majesty," he said, standing up. She studied him for a moment and smiled. "You saved my people. You returned something sacred. But I didn't call you here for thanks." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "No?" She stood and walked slowly toward him. Her golden gown shimmered with every step. "I called you here because I want you to marry my daughter." Silence. Daniel blinked again. I'm sorry." "What?" The Queen's tone remained calm. "My daughter, Princess Althera, is of age. She needs a mate who is brave, strong, and unshaped by Seravine politics. You are a warrior, a protector, and most of all, you do not lie." Daniel took a step back. "Your Majesty, I'm honored, but I'm just a pilot." She tilted her head. "Exactly. You are not from here. You see us with new eyes. You are not afraid to speak truth." Daniel swallowed hard. "You don't even know me." "We've watched you," she replied. "Althera has watched you too." That made his heart jump. "I don't understand," he said. "Why me?" The Queen moved closer. "Because my daughter is too perfect. Everyone here treats her like a goddess. But I fear she's alone. I want someone who sees her as a person, not just a title." Daniel looked away. "And what if I'm not worthy of her?" Lerexa smiled softly. "Then you may be the only one who is." Later that evening, Daniel stood in a guest chamber looking out at the glowing garden. His thoughts were spinning. Marry a princess? An alien princess? It sounded like something from a story. Suddenly, the door behind him opened. He turned and saw her. Princess Althera. She was radiant. Her skin shimmered softly in the moonlight. Her hair was a river of light. Her eyes were large, gentle, and curious. She wore no crown, only a simple white robe that made her seem more real, more human. "May I sit?" she asked. Daniel nodded. "Of course." She sat across from him, folding her hands in her lap. "I know this is strange," she said quietly. "My mother means well, but I had no say in this meeting." Daniel relaxed a little. "So you're not here to test me?" She smiled. "Maybe a little." They both laughed. "I've read about humans," she continued. "You feel things deeply. You fight for love, for freedom. Here we are taught to control emotion. It's seen as weakness." Daniel looked at her closely. "Do you agree?" She paused. "Sometimes, but not always." He hesitated, then spoke softly. "When I saw you walk in, I didn't see a goddess. I saw someone who didn't want to be worshipped. Althra looked at him, surprised. That's true, she said. Daniel stood. Your Highness, if I may speak freely, call me Althra. He nodded. Althra, you're beautiful. So perfect, it scares me. She tilted her head. Why? Because things that perfect shouldn't be touched. She stood as well. Then maybe I don't want to be perfect, she said. And with that, she left the room quietly, gracefully, leaving Daniel staring out into the glowing night, more confused than ever. The next morning, the palace was quieter. Daniel was guided through glowing hallways by a soft-faced servant who said nothing, only gestured toward a wide garden with floating flowers and light blue grass. There, standing near a pool of clear silver water, was Althra. She turned when he arrived and smiled. Her robe was different now, more formal, woven with golden threads that shimmered when she moved. But her eyes were still the same, calm, curious, kind. Good morning, Daniel, she said softly. He nodded, nervous. Good morning, Althra. She walked beside him along the edge of the garden. Bird-like creatures flew above, their wings leaving trails of light. Strange plants bloomed silently as they passed. Do you like it here? She asked. Daniel looked around. It's beautiful, like a dream. She looked at him sideways. And me? Am I part of that dream? He stopped walking. She had asked with no pride, no arrogance, just simple curiosity. You are, he said quietly. But you're more than that. How so? He struggled for words. You're too perfect. She blinked. Too perfect? He nodded. Everyone treats you like you're made of glass, like a goddess. And honestly, I get it. You're breathtaking. But it also means I'm terrified to be near you. Why? Because I don't want to break you? Althra stood still for a moment. Then she smiled, not politely, but sadly. You think I'm fragile, she said. I think, Daniel replied, you're someone who's never been allowed to be fragile. She looked down. That's true. They sat near the silver pool. The air was cool and silent. Daniel looked at her hands, delicate, glowing slightly with soft purple light. May I ask something personal? He said. She nodded. Have you ever been touched? I don't mean by guards or servants. I mean, touched by someone who wasn't afraid of who you are? She looked up at him slowly. No, never. A pause. Then she turned to him, her voice quiet. My people don't marry for love. We bond for power, for bloodlines, for peace. My mother wants me to choose someone who respects tradition. But she hesitated. I want to be seen. Daniel understood more than he could say. Don't think I'm strong enough for you, he said honestly. Not because you're a warrior, but because you're too rare. If I held your hand, I might drop it. If I kissed you, I'd feel like I ruined something sacred. Althra smiled again, softly this time. That's why I want you, Daniel. He froze. You see the part of me no one else dares to look at, she said. You treat me like a person, not a prize. He shook his head. But I'm not like you. I'm just a human. I'm not royal. I've done things I'm not proud of. Good, she said, standing up. Then maybe you understand what it means to feel. That night, Daniel was alone in his chamber again. He stared out the tall glass window, watching the twin moons rise. He thought about her smile, about her words, about how close they had sat, about how human she had felt, despite everything alien around her. And then, he whispered to himself, she's too perfect to touch. But deep inside, a question stirred. What if she wanted to? Be touched? Not with power, not with fear, but with care. In another chamber, Queen Larexa watched everything on a projection screen. She turned to her advisor and said, He has not touched her. He does not try to win her. He fears her beauty. The advisor replied, that fear may be his strength. The queen's eyes narrowed slightly, or his weakness. The next day, Daniel would be tested Dot, and Althera would face a truth no training had prepared her for Dot, because sometimes being seen is the most dangerous thing of all. Dot. The sun rose bright and sharp on the planet. Saravine. Daniel stood near the queen's ship, tall, smooth, and glowing gold, as servants prepared it for launch. He was told today was a royal event, a tour of the outer colonies, a chance to be seen beside Princess Althera. He didn't feel ready, but he agreed. Althera arrived, dressed in ceremonial armor-like silver with blue crystal accents. She looked calm, but her eyes found Daniel quickly. "Still afraid to break me?" she asked with a smile. Daniel chuckled. Every minute. She stood beside him as the ramp lowered. "I'm glad you came." The ship rose into the sky, smooth and fast. Inside, the princess and Daniel stood side by side on the observation deck. Below them, glowing forests and floating lakes passed by. Althera explained the history of her people, how emotions were once common, but then were seen as dangerous. Control became the law, she said. Feeling became shame. Daniel nodded. Maybe it's time someone broke that law. She looked at him. Maybe you already did. They shared a quiet moment. Then everything exploded. A fireball tore through the skycruiser's side. Alarm screamed. Walls cracked. The ship tilted violently. Guards shouted over comms. Systems failed. Daniel was thrown to the floor. Sparks fell like rain. He saw Althera collapse. Smoke filled the room. "Althera!" He ran to her side. She was breathing, dazed. "We have to move," he said. "No." "The ship, it's going down." He scooped her into his arms and headed for the emergency pod. But debris blocked it. "No choice," he muttered. Then he kicked out the shattered window, wrapped his arms around her tightly, and jumped. They fell through smoke, heat, and cold air. The sky blurred. The wind roared. For a second, Daniel felt like they might not make it. Then the forest caught them. Branches slowed their fall, crashing and snapping all around. They hit the ground hard. Daniel groaned. "Still alive?" Althera coughed. "Yes, I think." They were in a dense alien jungle. Blue fog floated between black trees. Strange glowing insects buzzed nearby. The ship was gone far above. Now a burning trail in the sky. No guards. Number comes. No help. Just the two of them. Daniel helped her sit up. Her arm was cut, bleeding softly with glowing fluid. He tore his sleeve and wrapped it gently. "You're hurt." "I'll survive," she said. "You saved me. I didn't think." She placed a hand on his chest. "You thought enough to hold on." He looked down, suddenly quiet. For the first time, she looked shaken. "Not weak, real." "I've never bled before," she whispered. "Not even in training," Daniel nodded. "Now you have. And I'm not afraid." They found a cave nearby, hidden behind thick roots. Inside, the air was warm and dry. Daniel started a small fire with survival tools from his belt. Althera sat quietly, watching the flame. "This world feels different," she said. "Like I'm seeing it for the first time." "You're seeing it with pain," Daniel replied. She looked at her hands. "And yet, it makes me feel alive." He looked at her closely. "You don't have to be perfect anymore." She turned her eyes to him. "What if I never was?" He smiled. "Then I like you even more." That night, as the fire crackled and soft alien wind blew through the cave, she leaned closer. "I've always felt like something was missing," she whispered. "And now I know what it is." "What?" "Someone who didn't see me as untouchable. He didn't move. I was. Wrong to be afraid of breaking you, he said softly. Because now I see. You are already breaking from the inside. She smiled gently. And you caught me. Outside, the fire's glow danced on the cave walls. Inside, for the first time in her life, the perfect princess cried, and for the first time ever, she was free to do so. The fire inside the cave was almost out. Outside, the alien forest was quiet. The glowing fog drifted between the trees like smoke from a dream. Strange bird sounds echoed softly in the distance. Daniel sat with his back to the wall, watching the flames flicker. His arm was bruised, his body ached, but his mind was awake to awake. Beside him, Althera was curled up, sitting with her knees close to her chest. Her silver-white hair shimmered faintly in the firelight. Her ceremonial robe was torn and dirty, but she had never looked more real, more human. For a long while, neither of them spoke. Then she broke the silence. "I thought I would die today," she said, voice low. "And I didn't feel fear. I felt something else." Daniel looked at her gently. "What did you feel?" "I felt like if I died beside you, it wouldn't be a bad death." He didn't know how to respond, so he DIDN single quotes T. Instead, he reached for another stick and added it to the fire. The flame rose again, casting soft orange light over both of them. Althera looked down at her hands. "They say I'm the image of Seraphine perfection," she whispered. "But when the ship exploded, no one saw a goddess. Only a girl who didn't know how to fall." "You didn't fall," Daniel said. "You flew. You survived. Because of you." He met her eyes. "No," he said. "Because you wanted to live." She reached toward the fire, warming her hands. Then her hand moved slightly closer to his. He noticed, but he didn't react. Her fingers trembled, then touched his. Soft, slow, no one watching, no rules to follow. It was the first time someone had touched Althera with no purpose, no duty. Just because. Daniel turned his hand, gently holding hers. No words, just warmth. Althera's voice was barely a whisper now. "I don't want to go back." "To the palace?" he asked. She nodded. "There I am always watched, always judged, always bowed to. But here, I can bleed, I can cry, I can breathe." "You're not alone anymore," he said. She looked into his eyes. "I know." They sat like that for a while, her head resting on his shoulder, his hand wrapped around hers. No promises. No pressure. Only presence. In the distance, something howled. Daniel stood quickly, alert, but Althera pulled his hand gently. "Let it be," she said. "There's peace tonight. For once, I don't want to fight." Daniel nodded. And he sat back down. Later, as they lay near the soft glowing fire, Althera spoke again. "I used to dream of being touched like this," she admitted. Gently, honestly, not like a ceremony, not like I was made of stone. Daniel didn't move. He only said, "You're not stone." She smiled. "I'm not perfect either." He turned to her. "That's what makes you perfect." The moonlight slipped through the cave entrance, painting silver lines across their faces. And in that quiet space, without a throne or crown, the alien princess touched the human not with command, but with trust. And for Daniel, it was the most powerful moment of his life. The guards dragged him through the palace halls. Behind them, the alien queen's voice echoed. "You protected her. She chose you. So why won't you take her hand?" Daniel stayed silent, because his heart already knew the answer. The ship that came to rescue them landed silently in the jungle clearing. It was a royal craft, black and gold, with the Seraphine crest glowing on the hull. Guards stepped out quickly, their weapons ready. Medics rushed to Althera. Daniel stood by her side, but they separated him the moment she was safely inside. No one spoke to him. Not a word. Not even a thank you. Back at the palace, Daniel was placed in a guest chamber under protective observation. He wasn't a prisoner, but he wasn't free either. The next day, 2 guards came and escorted him to the throne room. He walked slowly. Heart-pounding. Queen Lyrexa waited at the top of the marble stairs, her face unreadable. She was not wearing ceremonial robes this time, only a simple black dress, like shadow woven into fabric. Her eyes locked on him. "You disobeyed me," she said coldly. Daniel stood tall. "I saved her." "Yes," the queen snapped, stepping down. "And then refused her." Gasps filled the room. Advisors and council members were watching from the sides. "Althra wasn't there. She chose you," Lyrexa continued. "She defended you. She risked her name for you. And when you had the chance to bond, you hesitated." Daniel's throat tightened. "Your Majesty, I didn't hesitate to save her. I just didn't want to take something I didn't deserve." "Deserve?" She echoed, stepping closer. "You dare speak of deserve after she gave you her trust?" "I never asked for it," he said. "But you earned it," she roared. "You touched her. You held her. Do you understand what that means to us?" Daniel looked away. "I didn't want to break her." The queen's voice dropped. "She is not made of glass, human. She is fire." "I know," Daniel whispered. "That's why I feared being the one to dim her flame." There was a pause. A deep, quiet silence. The queen stared at him, then spoke softly. "You think this is about fear?" "It's about love," Daniel replied. "Real love asks for nothing, demands nothing. And right now, she doesn't need a husband. She needs freedom." From behind the throne, soft footsteps echoed. Althra entered the room. She wore simple clothes, no armor, no crown. Just herself. The entire chamber turned toward her. She walked straight to Daniel and stood between him and the queen. "I asked him not to bond with me," she said clearly. Lyrexa's eyes widened. "What?" Althra faced her mother. "Because I needed to know if he loved me without duty, without royal law, without being forced." She turned to Daniel. "And now I know." Daniel didn't speak. He just met her eyes. She smiled and took his hand. Again, the queen's shoulders lowered slowly. The fire in her face cooled. "And let your choice be your own," she said quietly. "But understand, the stars may not forgive you." Daniel held Althra's hand tighter. "I don't need their forgiveness," he said. "Just hers." Later that night, Althra and Daniel sat in the royal garden under twin moons. She leaned against him. "I thought she would tear you apart," she said. "She almost did," he chuckled. "But you stood your ground." "I didn't come here to win a crown," he replied. "I just wanted you to know. I see you." She smiled. "Then maybe that's enough." The grand hall of Seravin had never been this full. High council members, nobles from every city, and even off-world ambassadors sat in silence. Above them floated banners of glowing energy symbols of unity, tradition, and law. But today, tradition was being questioned not because today Princess Althra would speak for herself. Daniel stood behind the inner glass barrier, not allowed to be near the royal floor. He didn't argue. This moment wasn't his. It was hers. Althra stood at the center of the marble platform, tall and calm, wearing her royal silver gown, but with no crown. Only a small blue gem on her forehead glowed. The queen sat behind her, flanked by silent advisors. An elder counselor stood. "Princess Althra, do you accept the royal bonding ritual as is required by Seravine law?" The room held its breath. Althra raised her voice, not loud, but clear. "No." Shock swept through the room like a wave. Gasps. Whispers. A few angry shouts. The elder tried to speak again. Perhaps you meant to say. I said no, Althera interrupted, firmer now. I will not be bonded under law. Not as a tool. Not as a symbol. The queen's eyes narrowed. And what do you think you are, daughter? Althera turned. To her. I am a person, mother. Not just a perfect daughter. Not a goddess. Not a statue to worship. She paused. I have cried. I have loved. And not because a tradition told me to. One of the counselors stood, clearly angry. You defy 10,000 years of sacred ritual. I defy a system that teaches us to hide our feelings. Althera replied. Her voice didn't shake. I want to choose who I love. And if he loves me back, I want it to be real, not part of a contract. Another elder spoke. And this human he will stand beside you without titles? Without power? Daniel raised his voice through the barrier. I already have. Althera smiled at him across the room. The queen rose slowly. The room went quiet again. Lerexa looked at her daughter. Then at the crowd. She chooses the path of imperfection, the queen said, her voice calm now. Of freedom, of danger. Some elders nodded in disapproval. Others looked thoughtful. Althera stepped closer to her mother. Then let me be that example, she said. Let me live as myself, and show the people it is possible. The queen stared at her. For a long time. Then she did something no one expected. She nodded. Then your choice will become the new way. Gasps again, but this time from surprise. Not anger. The queen turned to the council. If she succeeds, it will prove our people can evolve. If she fails, we will return to our old ways. But we will let her try. Hours later, Daniel walked with Althera through the royal garden. Guards no longer followed. People no longer whispered. They simply watched, and many smiled. You changed everything, Daniel said. No, Althera replied. We did. She stopped beside a glowing tree and turned to him. I don't want a wedding, she said. I don't want a ceremony. Daniel nodded. What do you want? She took his hand and placed it on her heart. I just want you, beside me. Nothing else. He smiled. Then I'm not going anywhere. Above them, stars blinked gently in the sky. Two worlds, human and Seraphine, had taken the first step toward something new. Not perfect, not controlled, but real. No crown. No royal speech. Just two hands joined under the stars. And as they walked, side by side, the galaxy watched, not a prince and princess, but two souls choosing each other freely. Weeks had passed since Althera changed the law. Seraphine was still adjusting. The elders spoke less. The people spoke more. And for the first time in generations, emotion was not feared, it was studied. It was even respected. Many still doubted her. Many feared the human. But neither of them tried to convince anyone. They just kept walking together. In the center of the capital stood a new place. The Garden of Choice. It had no throne. No statues. Only a long crystal path where citizens could walk freely and speak without fear of judgment. And today, Althera and Daniel walked it hand in hand. She wore a soft gray robe. No crown. He wore his simple explorer uniform. No medals. There were no guards. No music. Only silence. And thousands watching quietly. At the end of the path, Daniel stopped. He turned to her and smiled. Are you sure about this? Althera nodded. More sure than I've ever been. He gently took something from his pocket. Not a ring, but a small stone, smooth, black, from the jungle where they had survived together. It was the first thing she had touched after bleeding for the first time. I found this near the cave, he said. When you fell asleep in my arms, you didn't see it. She reached for it with both hands and held it to her heart. You remembered. I remember everything. he said. No words were spoken to the crowd, no declarations. Just a quiet moment, where she pressed her forehead to his dot, and in that stillness, something beautiful happened. Above them, the lights in the sky shimmered. 2 energy banners appeared, one blue, one gold. They twisted together, glowing as one dot. It was the first time in Ceravine history that a union had been approved not by a council, but by the people. They cheered not for a wedding, but for a choice. Later, the queen stood in her chamber, watching the moment through a crystal screen. Her advisor spoke softly. "You allowed something dangerous today." She nodded. "Yes." "Do you regret it?" The queen turned away from the screen and looked at her hands. "No," she said, "because today she looked like a leader." As stars rose high above, Althera and Daniel walked quietly through the garden. "No vows?" She teased. "I already made one," he replied. "When?" "The day I jumped out of a crashing ship with you in my arms." She laughed softly. "You're lucky I survived." "No," he said, "we survived." They stopped beneath a glowing tree, the same kind that grew only after Ceravine began to change. Althera looked up. "Do you ever miss Earth?" "Sometimes," he said, "but it never gave me you." They stood together, watching the stars shift and shimmer in the night sky. A princess, a human dot, no longer separated by species, status, or fear. Just 2 hearts walking side by side, perfect. Not royal, just real. And as the galaxy watched them from afar, a quiet message spread across every world. Love, when chosen freely, can change even the coldest stars.